Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 16th of September. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast right here on Arirang TV. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. The national security chiefs of South Korea and the United States have reportedly agreed not to set a specific date for the transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul. South Korea's military finds the wreckage of yet another unmanned aircraft believed to be a North Korean drone in waters off a South Korean island in the West Sea. Plus, meeting for an emergency summit in Paris, world leaders from 30 countries, including 10 Arab states, vow to do whatever is necessary to help defeat Islamic State militants. But we start this morning in Washington, where South Korea's top security chief, Kim Kwan-jin, is meeting with his American counterpart, Susan Rice. Quoting diplomatic sources, South Korea's Yonhap news agency says both sides have agreed not to specify a set date for the transfer of wartime operational control from the US to South Korea. The date for the so-called OPCON transfer had been set for the end of 2015. Sources say Kim and Rice decided it best to continue monitoring the situation to see whether the conditions for the transfer have matured. Although nothing has been confirmed yet, as discussions are still ongoing, the sources say the Allies think maintaining a strong deterrence capability against North Korea is very important, is more important, in fact, than setting a transfer date. We'll bring you more details on these developments as we get them. Now, the US government has once again denounced North Korea for using American detainees as leverage to seek its political goal of direct talks with Washington. Speaking at a regular press briefing on Monday, US State Department Deputy Spokeswoman Marie Harf accused Pyongyang of using American nationals as human pawns. She was referring to Matthew Miller, the 24-year-old from California, who was sentenced by a North Korean court to 6 years hard labour a couple of days ago. She called on the North to release Mr. Miller and two other detained Americans, Jeffrey Fowle and Kenneth Bay, on humanitarian grounds. Now, North Korea is widely believed to be using the detained American citizens to try and extract a high-profile visit from Washington. In the past, former US Presidents Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter have visited the country to secure the release of detained Americans. The 69th UN General Assembly gets underway on this Tuesday in New York City, and it's garnering extra attention in South Korea, as one of the top agendas this year is the human rights situation north of the border in North Korea. A foreign ministers' meeting on the issue will be attended by South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se, US Secretary of State John Kerry and the Japanese Foreign Minister, as well as other foreign ministers from Europe. Now, the move for these open international discussions about the human rights conditions in North Korea follows this failed attempt to secure the release of those 3 American nationals we just heard about who were detained in North Korea. In a rare move, North Korea will send its Foreign Minister Lee Soo-young to New York to try and refute these very strong arguments and defend, if he can, North Korea's human rights conditions. Meanwhile, South Korean President Park Geun-hye will give a keynote speech at the General Assembly next Wednesday. A drone, presumably from North Korea, has been discovered in waters off the western side of a border island with the North. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff says the wreckage, as you can see there, was collected by a fisherman on Monday afternoon while he was fishing in waters near the South Korean border island of Baekneung-do. The military said it's pretty similar in appearance to a North Korean drone that was found in the south earlier this year. An investigation has been launched to determine the purpose of its being sent and the timing of its crash. New evidence to prove Japan's wartime atrocities has been revealed for the first time in more than 20 years, and it will be likely used to counter Tokyo's repeated denials of its past sexual enslavement of tens of thousands of Asian, mostly Korean women. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
16 Korean women appear in a 15-minute video clip sharing accounts of how they were victimized by Japan's military. Publicized by the Association for the Pacific War Victims after 21 years, it's expected to be used to fire back at Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who has said no clear evidence exists to support claims of Japan's sexual enslavement of women.
They told us our country had been taken away and that we have to come to Japan to be forced to work. We never got paid.
The recording was taken during interviews by a Japanese government delegation sent to Korea in 1993, right before Tokyo issued its landmark Ono Statement apology. The head of the group said the video was not released at Tokyo's request, but that they've decided to reveal it now due to Japan's continued distortment of the truth. Although a majority 14 of the victims have since passed on, the group emphasized that proof remains alive. It plans to report the clip to the United Nations and reveal the video piece by piece, depending on the attitude of the Japanese government. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And staying with historical matters of great importance, 64 years ago on Monday, the first shots were fired in one of the most important battles of the Korean War. When the Battle of Incheon ended 4 days later, the course of the war had altered completely, giving the advantage back to South Korea and its allies from the United Nations. To honor those who sacrificed their lives during this battle, a ceremony was held on Monday at the site of the Battle of Incheon. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
On June 25, 1950, the Communist North launches a surprise attack. Within 3 days, North Korean forces have invaded Seoul, and a few days later, North Korea has the majority of the South in its grasp, with the exception of the southern port city of Busan. Weeks pass and hopes fade, but on September 15th, the Allied forces, led by General Douglas MacArthur, begin to turn the tide. Some 75,000 troops and 261 vessels launch an amphibious invasion. The Battle of Incheon, as is known today, ends in a decisive victory for the United Nations. To commemorate the battle, a ceremony was held where it took place on Monday. More than 2,200 people attended, including Korean War veterans and government and military officials.
If it wasn't for the Battle of Incheon, the Republic of Korea would not exist. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all the veterans from all 63 countries.
To provide a better understanding of the historic battle, soldiers from the Korean Navy and Marines staged a reenactment using Aegis destroyer and various air and sea landing crafts. It brought back painful memories for some in attendance, who lived through the battle 64 years ago.
Who knew we would partake in the Battle of Incheon? By doing so, we took back Seoul, but I would really like to be with my fallen comrades, or at least see them in my dreams.
As the saying goes, forgive but don't forget. This ceremony not only serves to pay respect to the fallen, but to show this generation and generations to come of how lucky they are to enjoy the freedoms they have today. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News, Incheon.
Well, it's time now for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Tuesday morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by at the news centre. Very good morning to you, Eunice.
Good morning, Mark.
World leaders and top diplomats convened in Paris on Monday, and they produced a joint communique that has pledged to do whatever it takes to push back the Islamic State militants.
Right. That joint statement was signed by 26 Arab and Western nations, as well as Russia and China, and allowed for military assistance for Baghdad as well. Iran, however, not represented at the Paris summit, has rejected the global effort. Our Park Ji-won tells us why.
Some 30 Western and Arab countries, including Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait, gathered for the Paris summit, where they pledged to provide military support to Iraq, to help the war-torn nation defeat Islamic State militants. Iraq's President Fuad Massoum, co-host of the conference, said action must come quickly. France, host nation of the summit, has already begun surveillance flights over Iraq in preparation for further military action. French fighter jets taking off from United Arab Emirates flew over Iraq on Monday on a reconnaissance mission. Iraq's Kurds, who have scored some significant victories over IS in recent weeks, welcomed the global efforts to quash the extremists.
This summit in Paris is a historic summit, especially for the Kurdish people and the government. It is a very important step to destroy IS with help from friendly countries such as the great powers France, the US, and Britain.
However, the summit's joint communique made no mention of Syria, the other country IS controls large parts of. Neither Syria nor its main ally Iran were represented at the summit, mostly assembled by the US. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on Monday expressed his discontent with the US-led coalition from a hospital where he had just undergone prostate surgery.
In the last few days, we've had some excitement, and with that excitement, we've been hearing from American officials making comments on forming a state, which are blank, hollow, and self-serving, and lack in any direction.
Although Iran says it supports the Syrian and Iraqi government's fight against the militants, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said last week that it would be inappropriate for Tehran to join the global coalition because Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And relatedly, we are receiving news that the U.S. has begun airstrikes on the outskirts of southwest Baghdad, which would mark the start of an expanded American aerial warfare there against IS fighters. More to come in following newscasts. Now, we are less than 3 days away from referendum day in Scotland, where citizens there will answer a simple question on the ballot: should Scotland be an independent country? Both yes and no camps are feverishly campaigning for their respective dispositions in the final stretch, as British Prime Minister David Cameron, in his final pitch in Scotland, urged its 5 million citizens not to pull out of the United Kingdom after 307 years. He stressed a breakup would be a painful divorce and not a mere trial separation, and reasoned with critics that any qualms they have with his government can be addressed and changed. Scotland has long wanted more representation and a louder voice in the Union. Opinion polls on the referendum remains too close to call. Queen Elizabeth II on Sunday broke her silence on the matter and urged Scots to think very carefully about the future. Buckingham Palace clarified that the Queen remained neutral ahead of Thursday's vote. The International Organization for Migration estimates more than 2,500 people have drowned in the Mediterranean this year. The group said just last week some 500 migrants were feared dead after their ship was rammed by another boat near Malta, with survivors saying the boat bound for Egypt had been intentionally sunk by traffickers. The United Nations estimates more than 130,000 migrants arrived in Europe by sea this year, up from 80,000 last year, many of whom traveled from North Africa and the Middle East in overcrowded ships. And in tech news, first-day iPhone orders hit a new high, logging a record 4 million orders, which was double the number for the iPhone 5 2 years ago. Apple said deliveries will begin on Friday and continue through the month of October, as demand overran supply for both the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus, featuring larger screen sizes and a longer battery life. Analysts say they expect sales of the two iPhone models will top 9 million in the first weekend.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. Arirang News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers 15 billion. The interim chief of Korea's main opposition party appears to be on the brink of resigning, with the party seemingly irrevocably split down factional lines. If Park Yeon-sun decides she's had enough and throws in the towel, the Liberal camp will plunge further into disarray, especially since barely a month has passed since the figureheads of the alliance stepped down. Kim Young-gil reports.
Park Yeon-sun of the New Politics Alliance for Democracy doesn't just appear to be thinking about stepping down as interim chief. There are speculations she may even quit the party altogether. It comes amid pressure from within the main opposition bloc to step down both as the chief of its emergency committee and as its floor leader.
We've been urging floor leader Park Yeon-sun for her voluntary resignation. If she does not step down, we will have to put some pressure on her to do so.
The contention stems from Park's handling of a special bill that would set up an investigation into April's ferry disaster. Park on two separate occasions reached agreements with the ruling Saenuri party on the legislation, but both times the compromise was met with fierce criticism from the victims' families and from within her own party. Park looked to step aside last week by appointing two co-chairmen to lead its emergency committee, but the proposal was quickly batted down by senior party members, who objected to those who were nominated. With Park on the outs, veteran lawmakers with the opposition party have already begun thinking about who her replacement should be and call for someone who is more moderate. Whoever that next leader is will walk into a party torn apart by factionalism and infighting. The party also remains at odds with the ruling Saenuri party at the National Assembly, which has passed 0 bills in recent months because of the ferry bill standoff. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Now, the exponential growth of visitors from China to Korea is having a startling effect on the stock prices of Korean firms in the tourism sector. Our Hwang Jie has the details.
In Seoul's bustling shopping district of Myeongdong, it's very easy to find Chinese tourists, and the ever-increasing number of visitors from China is driving strong gains in tourism-related shares. According to the Korea Exchange, the stock prices of 31 firms listed on the local bourse whose brands are popular among the Chinese have risen 51% on average since the end of last year. Contrast that against the 1.1% gain the benchmark Kospi posted over the same period. Because of this, many Korean businesses that used to rely on domestic consumption by Koreans are eyeing these high-spending customers from across the West Sea. In general, Chinese people are much wealthier than they used to be. China's gross national income per capita last year stood at over $6,700. That's more than 5 times higher than in 2003. And due to the popularity of Korean pop culture in China, experts say the country's spending power has a massive impact on Korean companies, particularly those in the entertainment, cosmetic, and clothing industries. And with more Chinese tourists forecast to visit Korea during the upcoming Chinese holiday season early next month and the Incheon Asian Games that kick off this week, expectations are high that they'll give domestic demand in Korea a much-needed boost. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Now, the excitement is building to a fever pitch here in Korea as the 17th Asian Games kick off in a mere 3 days' time, with a grand opening ceremony planned in Korea's western port city of Incheon. Now, for a look at South Korea's prospects and North Korea's participation in these games, our Song Ji-sun has a preview of the continent's biggest and best sporting event.
The Asian Games is Asia's biggest sports celebration. This year's 16-day event, being held in the South Korean port city of Incheon, will showcase the talents of some 10,000 athletes. North Korean athletes will be among them, and the first wave of their delegation arrived in the South last Thursday. But North Korean cheerleaders will not be making the trip. They were in hand for the Asian Games in Busan back in 2002, but are skipping this year's event after failing to reach an agreement with the South over their accommodations and expenses. Looking ahead to the competition, South Korea is aiming for a top 2 finish in the overall medal count for the 5th consecutive event, with its eye on winning at least 90 golds. China has been a fixture atop the medal count dating all the way back to the 1982 Games. Preliminaries for several sports kicked off over the weekend, and Team South Korea got off to a quick start. The men's football team beat Malaysia 3-0, and the women's squad trounced Thailand 5-0. If you want to catch some of the action in person, the organizing committee announced that only 20% of the overall tickets have been sold as of this Monday. Seats are also still available for Friday's opening ceremony, which starts at 6 p.m. For more information, visit incheon2014ag.com. 송지선, 아리랑 뉴스.
And a good Tuesday morning to you all as we kick things off in the LPGA, where 19-year-old Kim Hyo-ju has jumped up quite a bit in the latest world rankings after that impressive win at the Avian Championship over the weekend. Now, the team sensation, who recently made the top 20 ranking for the first time in her career, went from being ranked 20th in the world to number 10 after winning her first LPGA Tour major. Meanwhile, Carrie Webb, who finished second this past weekend, jumped up 4 spots and overtook Ryu So-yeon for the 5th spot. And now moving over to the upcoming Incheon Asian Games, as the opening ceremony is set to kick off on Friday. And it was announced on Monday that Olympic wrestling gold medalist Kim Hyun-woo will be the flag bearer for Korea. The Korean Olympic Committee on Monday confirmed that Kim Hyun-woo will carry the national flag at the opening ceremony. Now, the 25-year-old won gold medal during the 2012 London Games during the 66-kilogram Greco-Roman wrestling competition, and also won gold during the 2013 Budapest World Championships in the 74-kilogram competition as well. And staying with the Asian Games, with Korea's Pro Baseball League now on a break, the Asian Games team got together on Monday and held a press conference kicking off their hunt for the gold medal. With the press conference taking place with the entire team on hand, manager Lee Jung-il, who led the Samsung Lions to 3 straight Korea Series victories, stated that the team will win all 5 games and win the Asian Games gold. With confidence oozing out from the entire team, they're set to begin training in Jamsil Stadium before holding an exhibition game against the LG Twins later in the week. Now, not a lot of people might be following up on the U16 AFC Championship, which is currently taking place in Bangkok, but if there's one reason to watch it, it's Lee Seung-woo. Now, the 16-year-old, who currently plays for Barcelona's youth team, has been called the next Leo Messi by many experts. And after scoring 2 goals against Japan during the quarterfinals, more and more eyes are on the boy wonder, as Korea is set to face off against Syria during the semifinals on Wednesday. And now finishing things off in the PGA, Billy Horschel, who played the best golf of his life in the past 4 weeks, capped it all off with a PGA Tour Championship victory over the weekend. And his prize, $10 million. Horschel, who won $3.5 million in prize money during the past 3 tournaments, capped it all off with a Tour Championship victory to claim the FedEx Cup and its $10 million bonus. Pulling away from Rory McIlroy early and holding off Jim Furyk late in the round, Billy Horschel completes the greatest month of his life. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Today should be a bit brighter than yesterday, and there are a good amount of sunshine, but big temperature difference we've been experiencing continues today, so please take good care of your health. Well, drinking lots of water and taking a good rest are a few suggestions to boost up your immune system, so please keep that in mind. And we had the coolest morning of the season this morning, starting out at about 15 degrees Celsius here in Seoul, but daytime daytime highs will soar to high 20s, expecting a beautiful autumn weather across the nation. So let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The afternoon high in the capital, Gwangju and Busan should all rise to 27, while Daegu should see highs of 28 in the afternoon. And for other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon will top out at 26 as well, while Dokdo should see highs of 23, while Mount Keungang gets up to 14. Well, that's all I have for you at this hour, and let's send it back to Mark in the studio.
Well, thank you very much, Jeon, for the weather there. And that's going to do it for us. Do have a fantastic rest of the day, and thanks for watching. I'm Mark Broome, and I'll be back with Ojin Ju at noon Korea time. Until then, goodbye.